The WNBA is currently facing a period of significant internal instability as its rapid financial growth meets a deepening labor dispute. While expansion teams are commanding $50 million valuations and television ratings have increased by nearly 50%, the league's internal environment is increasingly fractured. A division is forming within the players' union, pitting the league's highest-earning stars against the majority of players who rely on their immediate salaries to cover basic living expenses. If these groups cannot reach an agreement before the season begins, the league's current period of unprecedented growth may be cut short. Breanna Stewart recently addressed the league's financial structure, noting that this is the first time a revenue-sharing model has been seriously considered. However, she acknowledged that only 10 to 15 players in the entire league have the financial stability to withstand a season-long strike. This creates a disparity between the leaders of the movement, who benefit from major endorsement deals and signature shoes, and the role players who lack a similar financial cushion and may be disproportionately affected by a work stoppage. The composition of the negotiating committee adds further complexity to these discussions. High-profile stars such as Stewart and Nafisa Collier are maintaining a hardline stance while also owning Unrivaled, an independent 3-on-3 basketball league. This alternative platform provides them with a level of financial security not available to bench players in cities like Atlanta or Chicago, who have no secondary professional options if the WNBA season is canceled. The financial figures currently under debate are substantial. The league has reportedly offered a deal that includes a $1 million base salary for top stars, with total potential earnings exceeding $1.2 million. The union has characterized this offer as inadequate, instead demanding 30% of gross revenue. League officials state that meeting this demand would result in projected losses of $700 million over the next several years. This standoff highlights a fundamental disagreement. The players are seeking compensation levels comparable to the NBA, while ownership argues that the league's current revenue cannot yet support that model. The timing of this dispute is a critical factor. The league is currently experiencing a surge in popularity, often referred to as the Caitlin Clark effect. Last season, merchandise sales reached record highs and regular season games averaged 1.2 million viewers. Historical precedents in professional sports suggest that extended strikes can alienate casual fans and halt momentum. If the 2026 season is lost to a labor dispute, there is no guarantee that the audience will return when play eventually resumes. Friction within the union is becoming more visible as the spring season approaches. Sources indicate that rank-and-file players are increasingly interested in accepting the league's current offer. The proposal includes housing concessions for rookies and a significant increase in the minimum salary, raising it from $67,000 to $250,000. While union leadership views these figures as a starting point for negotiations, for many players, this represents a life-changing increase in compensation. Union leadership argues that rising team valuations, which now reach $100 million, justify their demand for an immediate share of the revenue. They view the league's current popularity as their primary source of leverage. However, the risk remains that a prolonged walkout could overshadow the league's recent achievements. If the players choose to walk away from the court during the WNBA's most visible era, the long-term impact on the sport may outweigh the short-term goals of the negotiation. The current media rights environment serves as the primary catalyst for this dispute. In 2024, the WNBA entered into a new multi-year media rights agreement alongside the NBA, valued at approximately $200 million annually over an 11-year period. This deal, involving Disney, NBC Universal, and Amazon Prime Video, represents a significant increase from the previous $60 million annual valuation. However, the union argues that this figure is still an undervaluation given the recent surge in viewership metrics. Central to the negotiation is a look-back provision that would allow for a reassessment of the contract's value if the league reaches certain growth benchmarks before 2028. Players contend that the value of their labor is being locked into a long-term contract that fails to account for the exponential growth of the women's sports market. The entry of expansion teams has added another layer of financial complexity to the league's balance sheet. The Golden State Valkyries, scheduled to begin play in 2025, paid a $50 million expansion fee, a figure that was unthinkable 5 years ago when teams were valued at a fraction of that amount. Subsequent expansion announcements for Portland and Toronto suggest a league that is scaling up its infrastructure at an aggressive pace. While these fees provide an immediate infusion of capital, they also create a new class of owners with high expectations for a return on investment. These new owners, often coming from backgrounds in the NBA or private equity, are accustomed to high-stakes labor negotiations but are also managing the substantial costs of building training facilities and front office operations from the ground up. Operating costs for the league have also risen as player demands for professional-grade amenities have been met. The transition to full-time charter flights for all teams is estimated to cost the league approximately $25 million per year. While this was a major victory for player health and safety, it is a recurring expense that does not directly generate revenue. Owners point to these types of investments as evidence of their commitment to the league's long-term viability, arguing that the gross revenue the players want a 30% stake in is already being heavily depleted by the necessary costs of modernization. The history of the Women's National Basketball Players Association shows a shift in strategy from survival to equity. During the 2020 CBA negotiations, the focus was on establishing a foundational level of professional respect, including maternity leave benefits and improved travel standards. At that time, the league was still working to prove its sustainability to the broader sports market. Today, the conversation has shifted entirely toward the split of the economic surplus. The prioritization rule, introduced in the 2020 agreement, has become a major point of contention. While this rule requires players with more than 2 years of experience to report to WNBA training camps on time or face fines and eventual suspension, effectively forcing them to choose the WNBA over more lucrative late-season contracts in European or Turkish leagues. Players argue that if the league is going to limit their ability to earn money overseas, it must compensate them at a level that makes the WNBA a year-round career. The international market has historically been the primary source of income for many WNBA players. In leagues in Russia, Turkey, and China, top American players have traditionally earned salaries ranging from $500,000 to over $1 million for a single winter season. Following the detention and eventual release of Brittany Griner in Russia, many players have reconsidered the safety and political risks of playing in certain regions. This has placed even more pressure on the WNBA to bridge the pay gap. If the domestic league cannot provide a comparable salary, and the prioritization rule prevents players from finishing their overseas seasons, the league risks losing its mid-tier talent to international competition permanently. The internal demographics of the union further complicate the push for a strike. The WNBA roster consists of only 144 spots, making it one of the most exclusive professional sports leagues in the world. For a rookie making the minimum salary of approximately $67,000, a single missed season could mean the end of their professional career. Unlike the NBA, where a veteran can rely on career earnings to weather a lockout, the average WNBA career lasts only 3 to 5 years. The leadership's willingness to risk a season for long-term structural changes is seen by some as a gamble with the livelihoods of players who have the least amount of time to recoup their losses. Behind the scenes, the Caitlin Clark effect has fundamentally altered the league's negotiating leverage. In previous years, the league was often in the position of asking for coverage and investment. Now, with sellout crowds in arenas like Indianapolis, Chicago, and Las Vegas, the league is a proven commercial product. However, this growth has also led to increased scrutiny of the league's hard cap and roster limits. Each team is currently limited to 12 players, and the total salary cap per team is roughly $1.46 million. This cap makes it mathematically impossible for teams to pay multiple stars a maximum salary while still fielding a competitive bench. The union is pushing for a substantial increase in the cap to allow for supermax contracts that reflect the market value of the league's icons. Ownership, led by Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, maintains that the league is still in an investment phase. They argue that while revenue is increasing, it is not yet profit. Most WNBA teams have historically operated at a loss, subsidized by the NBA or by wealthy individual owners who view the team as a long-term asset. The league's argument is that a 30% gross revenue split would trigger a financial collapse for the smaller market teams that do not have the same sponsorship opportunities as the New York Liberty or the Las Vegas Aces. They propose a model based on net profit, which would only trigger higher player payouts once the league's operating expenses are covered. The union has rejected this, citing concerns over creative accounting that could hide profits behind various corporate expenses. The role of the NBA in these negotiations remains a significant variable. The NBA still owns approximately 42% of the WNBA. While the NBA provides a safety net and shared resources, its involvement also means that any labor precedent set in the WNBA could influence future NBA negotiations. Some analysts suggest that the NBA is cautious about allowing a gross revenue-sharing model in the WNBA, because it could empower the NBA Players Association to demand similar structural changes in their next CBA. This creates a situation where WNBA players are not just negotiating against their own owners, but against the broader economic interests of the most powerful basketball organization in the world. As the deadline for a new agreement approaches, the rhetoric on both sides has intensified. The union has pointed to the recent valuations of the Seattle Storm, which reached $151 million, as proof that the poor league narrative is no longer accurate. They argue that if the teams are worth 9 figures, the players who generate that value should not be struggling to pay rent in high-cost cities like Los Angeles or New York. Conversely, owners point to the rising costs of arena security, marketing, and the newly established league-wide health and retirement funds as evidence that they are already distributing wealth back to the players in non-salary forms. The psychological impact of a strike on the fan base cannot be overlooked. The WNBA has spent nearly 3 decades building a loyal, grassroots community. The recent influx of new fans has brought more money but also more volatility. Unlike the NBA or NFL, which have survived multiple lockouts due to their deep-rooted cultural status, the WNBA is in a more fragile position. A strike in 2026 would occur just as the league is reaching its highest level of cultural relevance. Marketing experts warn that if the league goes dark, the corporate sponsors who recently signed multi-million-dollar deals, Nike, Google, and AT&T, may look to reevaluate their commitments. The emergence of Unrivaled and other off-season opportunities has provided the top 1% of players with a safety valve that didn't exist in previous years. Founded by Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, Unrivaled is designed to keep the best players in the country during the winter months while offering equity stakes to its participants. While this is a positive development for player empowerment, it creates a potential conflict of interest within the union leadership. If the people leading the strike have their own league to fall back on, their incentives may not align with the 120 other players who have no such alternative. This has led to quiet discussions among rank-and-file players about whether the union's leadership is truly representative of the entire body or just its elite tier. The 2026 season represents a crossroads for the league's identity. On one side is the vision of a league that continues its slow, steady path toward profitability under the current ownership model. On the other is the vision of a player-led revolution that demands immediate parity with other professional sports, even at the risk of short-term insolvency. The data suggests that the league is growing fast enough to support higher wages, but the disagreement lies in the timing and the mechanism of that distribution. In the final months of the current agreement, the focus will likely shift to the specific definitions of basketball-related income. If the players can expand that definition to include a wider range of sponsorship and media assets, they may find a middle ground that provides the life-changing money for the bench players while securing the supermax deals for the stars. However, if the owners remain firm on the $700 million loss projection, the standoff will move from the boardroom to the picket line. The outcome will determine whether the WNBA's golden era is a sustainable new reality or a brief peak followed by a self-inflicted decline. The logistics of a potential strike are already being discussed in locker rooms. Players are being advised to save their remaining paychecks from the current season and to look for short-term opportunities in broadcasting or coaching. For the younger players, particularly the high-profile rookies who entered the league in 2024 and 2025, the prospect of losing a year of development is a significant concern. They are the faces of the new WNBA, and their absence from the court would be the most visible sign of the league's internal crisis. As negotiations continue, the pressure from the public and the media will only increase. The WNBA has moved out of the niche sports category and into the mainstream, which means its labor disputes are now national news. The league's ability to navigate this period of growth without fracturing its internal culture will be the ultimate test of its leadership. Whether the final agreement is viewed as a victory for player rights or a necessary compromise for league survival will depend on which side is more willing to blink as the April tip-off approaches.